Namaste, Vanakkam, Hola, Bon dia, Bonjour, and hello. Warm greetings to all sisters and brothers that are joining us today from all over the world and India. We are very thankful to all of you for your lovely presence. Today, as a way of celebrating in advance Adyar Day, we have a very, very special program with a very special guest, our dear President, Tim Boyd. Today's event, A Cup of Theosophy with the President, is the first of a new series of A Cup of Theosophy with, in which we will be having a session of questions and answers without our guests. But before getting into the subject and introduce our guest, let us begin this meeting with the universal invocation, indicating the unity in diversity and oneness of life, followed by a few moments of silence. So I request all of you to get comfortable and peaceful. Oh, hidden life, vibrant in every atom. Oh, hidden light, shining in every creature. Oh, hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May all who feel themselves as one with thee know they are therefore one with every other. Well, although he doesn't need any introduction, for those of you who are new today, let us share some few words, some of the aspect about Tim's Boyd life as a dedicated worker of the TS, holding the office of president since 2014. Tim was born on 22nd October 1953, and he came in touch with theosophy during his youth. Since then till now, as he himself describes, this has been a journey of what we often call coincidences or accidents. But as we also know, there are no coincidences in this path. And all of these events are the ones that shaped him as he is today. An inspirational, dynamic, open-minded, ready to serve, and accessible leader with a cheerful smile always. All these attributes naturally are reflected in his work, be it the founding of a theosophical spiritual community in Chicago's inner city during his youth for creating employment of local youth and the creation of affordable homes for area residents, be it the duty as a national lecturer of TS America since 1988, as well as his volunteer work from 1996 to 2000 in hospice services involving doctors, social workers, and nurses, whether as the president of the TOS USA in 2007, and also as president of TS USA, or as the 8th international president of the Theosophical Society. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that due to his all-inclusive approach, he has really taken theosophical movement into the 21st century, for which we are very grateful to him. During a big part of this journey, he has had the support and beautiful presence of his wife, Lily, and Angelique, their daughter. So it is a very, very big pleasure to welcome him to this event. And before starting our dialogue with the president, we request him to share a few words on the new year and Adyar Day. Thank you very much, dear team, for being today, for accepting our invitation. And please, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Catalina. Thank you, Shikar. Thank you, everyone joining. I have to say, first of all, I'm not new to the idea of tea in a meeting. In fact, I have my cup with me as we speak. But it's very interesting because when I was serving as president in the United States, one of the events that we had there was called Tea with Tim. Similar sort of thing where we were just much more informal, a matter of sitting as we're going to do here, only virtually, and sharing some ideas and actually having some interaction. I enjoyed it personally uh, enormously because it was a possibility to just actually share face to face, not from a me to you sort of platform, which is a lot of what we do in our lecture format that we're so familiar with, but something that actually involves forming something bigger together. The idea of the possibility that many minds can reflect a much deeper aspect of the one mind when we come together. So that's what we do whenever we come together. And hopefully, in our time now, we'll have something similar that will happen. I want to welcome all of you, although the new year is starting to grow a little bit of a beard right now. Welcome you to this new year, first time with us getting together. A lot of things are behind us. For me, the past couple of years have meant, as with all of us, some degree of isolation. But for me, it's been locked into Chicago and the United States. I'm very, very much looking forward to the fact that in a couple of days, I will be back in Adyar. Although what I'm finding is that one of the things that has changed along the way, and one of the things that I think we can anticipate to be part of our future, is that traveling even is not what it used to be. I have never filled out so many forms just to get on a plane as I have had to do in these past few days. But that's part of what we look at as we move ahead. It's always a wonderful thing when a year begins because it gives us an opportunity to look back over what has been, but also to look forward. And in looking forward, to try to imagine a future. This has been something that has been at the root of this whole theosophical movement since its beginnings. The idea of a kinship of humanity, a brotherhood of humanity, is something that is definitely a far-seeing idea. It's an ideal that we are in the process of trying to realize. Within the theosophical movement, it's the idea of forming this nucleus that can exemplify that it can be shown that it's a possibility. And so this is what we try to do. And we try to do it in so many different ways. Adyar Day is coming up. Adyar Day is something that has been in effect for a number of years. It was actually a gentleman by the name of Fritz Kuntz, an American, who started the idea of linking February 17th to the celebration and the recognition and the support of this Adyar Center. Just looking at the names of the people who are participating here today, I recognize many of you, and I recognize that many of you have been to Adyar. So for those of you you recognize that there is something very special, something precious, something we could say sacred related to this place. Most of us will never set foot in Adyar. That's just the way it works. It's a long way away from people's homes. But the fact of it and the presence of it, its history and its ongoing influence are things that we can always connect with. I mean, as we all know, the greatest power that we have, we talk about the latent powers within, but the greatest power that we have is the power to, in some way, activate the various functions of our minds. And in that process, we can connect, we find, with each other and with all things. There are no limits. So for this new year, for this Adyar day, and for our time together right now, it's always a good thing for us to just remember why we're here, remember what it is we are looking toward, and remember that the only thing we have to do is just to be present, to be fully present, here and now. So with that, let me turn it back over to our hosts, our hostess with the mostest.
Thank you, Mr. President, for those really inspirational and uplifting words. As always, that you always instill a sense of vision that resonates with whoever listened to you. So all our guests who are listening today may have the opportunity in the future to visit Adyar and realize that peace that everyone who visits there realize. Thank you so much for that. And before we begin with the dialogue over a cup of tea, which as now most of us know, it's a very good tradition to continue as since you have been doing it before. So we are very happy to have you here. So let us listen to the Adyar song composed by Srimati Mugda Ben of Gujarat long back and sung by our very own brother Zinu Master, a member of Theosophical Society Mumbai. He has been a long-standing member of the TS and has served as a secretary and treasurer of Theosophical and Masonic bodies. And the essence of this song for all of our audience is that on the vast expanse of earth, there is a place like heaven, sacred and holy, situated at the confluence of a river and the ocean, abode of the temples of different religions, where lives the devotees of truth, art, and religion, and where the elder brothers of humanity visit. This living memory dwells eternally in my heart. Beloved and dear to us is this Adyar, a veritable paradise on the earth.
वसुंधरा विशाल पट पर विराज तू अभीत पावक परम मनोहर प्रभुता नीये कुंज विश्व विराज तू वैकुंठ विश्व विराज तू वैकुंठ वसुंधरा नाम विशाल पट पर विराज तू वैकुंठ सागर सरिता संगम काटे सौम्य क्षमा समीप मननीय शांति मंत्र मुक्त जा मननीय शांति मंत्र मुक्त जा मानव मंदिर से है वो अद्भुत है अदियार हमारो अद्भुत है अदियार मंदिर मस्जिद अभियानी है केवल कैवी धाम माया ममता स्वार्थ त्यागिनो माया ममता स्वार्थ त्यागिनो सेवा नाम निष्काम है वो अद्भुत है अदियार हमारो अद्भुत है अदियार एक पिता ना बालक साथ विशाल वरनी छाय निर्मल हृदय शुद्ध प्रेमी जा निर्मल हृदय शुद्ध प्रेमी जा सब कोई रेवा जाए वो अद्भुत है अदियार हमारो अद्भुत है अदियार सत्य कला ने धर्म उपासक सुर मुनिवर सतवार चेतनवंती याद अमर उर चेतनवंती याद अमर उर बालू है अदियार हमारो बालू है अदियार हमारो बालू है अदियार ईश्वर विराज तू वैकुंठ वसुंधरा विशाल पद पद विराज तू वैकुंठ
Well, thank you to Brother Sinu Master for sharing that inspirational piece. Even without understanding the language, I guess all of us could feel the essence of the music and what he was saying. And actually, this is one of the parts of a cup of theosophy, to share not only a dialogue, but also some artistic expressions. That also the power of art to get everyone together is very powerful. Now we will begin with the question, which, as Tim was mentioning, are a product of that interaction. Some members have contributed to build the question that we are going to discuss with the president today. And if time permits, we will also open for some questions. Let us see how the meeting develops. So the first question for today is, for a long time, there has been a need to define theosophy. But we all know that whatever definition we give, it will only be a partial one. But a welcome change came in our last presidentship, that a mission statement was formulated, which has a very simple yet profound way of expressing theosophy and theosophical society. Tim, could you kindly share with us how it all came about and how the mission statement helps in achieving the objects of the Theosophical Society?
Okay. Well, thank you for that question, whoever it came from. It's an interesting process, really, how this mission statement came into being, because actually it had its birth in one of the general council meetings, which at that time were occurring twice a year, but not as a mission statement. It didn't begin as a mission statement or as an intent for a mission statement. Theosophical Society now is about 146 years old, 147 years old. And in its history, it had never had a mission statement. We had the objects, 3 objects, which we have kind of worked into an idea of a mission, but a specific mission statement was something that we didn't have. This idea began, as I said, I couldn't tell you the exact year. I tend to forget these things right now, but came up in a general council meeting. And the idea at that time was that with many of our groups, their focus and their study goes in all kinds of different directions. And so you have different sections in the world where the feeling was that this just focuses on things that really don't aren't central to what the Theosophical Society needs to do. So the idea initially was, why don't we put up some kind of guidelines? Really what it works out to is limits, or, if you're a Christian sort of person, thou shalt not, that kind of idea, which, while it had some value, it became clear that really a more productive focus might be on what it is we shall do. So it took that bent, and over the course of about a year and a half, it evolved. So we needed to have some sort of language to express these things. Now, I don't know, probably many of you who are here have had the experience of working within theosophical groups and perhaps even working with committees. And there is this expression that a camel is a horse designed by a committee. So the idea is, with so many inputs, things can go in very funny directions. And that's something that you just have to acknowledge to a certain degree. But what was really so special to me, this has really been one of the highlights of my experience of working within the Theosophical Society, was the way these 24 words that comprise this mission statement came together. For those of you who are not familiar with it, the mission statement in its entirety is 24 words that are to serve humanity by cultivating an ever-deepening understanding and realization of the ageless wisdom, spiritual self-transformation, and the unity of all life. That's it. And the idea in trying to put these words together was that it had to be as compact as possible. It has to be translated into languages all around the world. So there was that. But the process was that ideas came, and some stuck, some fell away. And then we had determined that at a particular meeting that was going to take place over 5 days in Naarden, that was where we were going to focus on this. And we did. And to me, it was quite remarkable because there were many ideas that came. Again, some things made their presence known and became very apparent that this is a part of it, but how to express, and always minimal, less is more. But there came a point during that meeting where we were almost at the end, and everybody could feel it. This is 35 people sitting in a room, from people from all around the world, all different backgrounds. And we kept getting closer and closer. There was less and less. It's like Michelangelo's idea of a sculpture. How do you do it? Just take away everything that is not part of the mission. And it kept getting closer and closer. And there came a moment where this last piece fell into place. And with 35 different minds, 35 ideas and personalities, it was clear at that moment. You could feel it. It was one of those things that was so, sometimes when I describe it, you can tell I'm getting a little bit worked up, but sometimes it's one of those things where within the Theosophical Society, we talk about many things as true. One of those things being that there is such a thing as an overshadowing power that works through this theosophical movement. We recognize its activities in various threads and places of our history. This was one of those places where it became a direct experience of the people who were there. Because this was something that moment, something new came into the world, something of power, and something that was brought in through a cooperative activity of members of the TS, where personality gradually faded into the background. It was wonderful. So anyway, that's a short version of how this wonderful mission statement came into being. I tell people who I work with, very often people will ask you to, they hear theosophy, that you're associated with that. What is that? It's always it really depends on who you're talking to,
Yeah.
how you will describe that. But the Theosophical Society's mission, if you can remember 24 words, it can be a springboard into the activities of the Theosophical Society and some of the depths of the ageless wisdom. So it's a very useful tool in that regard.
Yeah, totally. I think we all agree on that, because really, before, if somebody had asked us what is theosophy, so the answer would vary every day, or even person to person, as you said. And just now, since you mentioned, it has 24 words, a very, I don't know, okay, although we study no coincidences, exactly 24 alphabets are in the Gayatri mantra. That
Why am I not surprised?
yeah. And 24 vertebrae in our spine, and so maybe there is a divine intervention in that, and it is, I feel it is as powerful as that universal invocation that we do in the beginning of the meetings, because this mission statements is not just clarify, also gives us that energy to push things. So that was a really very valuable addition in the past few years. And since, as you said, it starts with to serve, which is the prime focus of theosophical work. So when it comes to serving, we think education plays a very important role, because the kind of education system that we have had till now worldwide does not seem to be working, does not seem to be the best way of educating young ones, because today our world has the largest number of young people under stress. And TS, under your leadership, started a pilot project of bringing theosophical education to people in the form of Adyar Theosophical Academy. So how do you think it will help nurture the young ones differently in the 21st century? And are there any plans to start more such schools? And how can a TS member at a local lodge level or a state level can contribute to it? If you can share something about that.
Sure. I guess, first of all, I have to go back a little ways, because this is not the first school with in the theosophical world that I've been associated with. In the US, at the headquarters of the section in America, we brought in a school. There it was focused on an education that really put people in touch with the natural world. So it was something where it broadened perspectives, and the campus there was probably one of the main teaching tools. It's gone on to become quite a successful school in its own right. It's called the Prairie School. So when the opportunity to try this experiment, which is the Adyar Theosophical Academy, when the opportunity for that arose, it was something that, at least for myself, I was already kind of predisposed toward, because whether we say we received a good education, normally good education means an expensive school that gets you into the higher levels of academia, or whether we just come through the local public school systems, pretty much the pattern of molding and shaping individuals is very similar, in the sense that always there is a rating system of some sort that involves some degree of comparison, some degree of competition. There is very often fear-induced, not learning, but fear-induced behavior modification that is a part of all of these systems. And so those are things that have their effects. Part of the effect is that as we go on in life and we start to find that there are deeper resources within each of us, we have to engage in a process of unlearning the behaviors and the trainings that we were given when we were so young. And it's a very difficult process to undertake as time moves on. Once these patterns are established, it's difficult to undo. And so the idea has been that if, in fact, there can be an education that can be given where in those formative periods, people can recognize that, cooperation is possible, that fear is an inappropriate approach to anything. So these sorts of things are the main attempt within this sort of education, so that you can have a future generation of people whose behaviors are not bridled by fears, and whose sense of connection with the natural world and with each other it's a natural thing for all of us, but it's suppressed. Where those sorts of things can be a more normal way of behavior. It's a long-term way of thinking. Even if this experimental approach were to be adopted more broadly, which it will be, you're looking generations into the future when these things will be able to take hold. So yes, this is something where the idea is that it's something that can spread more broadly. Around the world, there are areas, there are sections within the Theosophical Society where there's great interest in this, this kind of education. It's a challenging model to put into place, of course, because the people who are the instructors are the ones who have to be taught first. Otherwise, the system is just a repetition of what's come before. So that's the issue. So in many ways, all of this comes back to what are you doing to yourself? And what are you exposing? What influences are you exposing yourself to? And based on that, that can help determine how you can plug in what you can do to help advance these sorts of things. There was more to your question, but that's I don't know if we want to talk only about schools today.
Yes, no, actually, as you pointed, the unlearning and the self-transformations are essential part of this process of education, and of course, starting as early as possible, as Annie Besant used to point, is something very important. But of course, not everyone has this chance and this, let's call it good karma of having this kind of education. And also a lot of the teachers are young people. So I guess also a way to spread this kind of theosophical way of seeing life is through young people. And as we are talking about education and young people, we all know that you joined TS at a very young age. due to the inspiration from your will-be mentor or teacher, Mr. Bill Lawrence, also called with love the old man. And at the same time, we also find a lot of discussion going around on how to attract the young people to the wisdom treasure of theosophy in order to make this transformation that we as theosophists are called to make. So we think you are really the best person to share with us what specifically were those things of the approach from Bill Lawrence that brought you closer to theosophy, so that the members may get a few valuable pearls of how to remove or reduce the so-called generational gap, and at the same time some tips of our young members on how to get the most from theosophy in their daily life. Would you please throw some light on this as per your experience?
That's a broad question. I can, just to talk about the old man, Bill Lawrence. It's very interesting to me because I was 19 when I first became exposed to him. And, the people around him, I didn't start calling him the old man, but the young people who were with him, that's what they had called him. And I think back, and at the time I met him, the old man to all of us was, I think, 54 years old. But to us, within the Theosophical Society, he's a child with our age base. But the old man, but it was the age part, I think, was in large measure due to his wisdom that he had garnered. Most of it he had gotten the hard way. He was a very unusual person. He was a highly clairvoyant man, but he didn't want to embrace that kind of direction. He had other ideas for himself, but somehow or another, his path in life kept bringing him back to that, and often through crises that his behaviors caused for himself. So he had this wealth of knowledge about life as most people have to live it, because he had been through that. And when you would talk to him, he was full of stories. And at first, when I got around him, I said, this can't be all true. This is just too many things that have happened in this man's life for this all to be completely true. So I would try and take it with a little grain of salt. I was around him for 13 years until he died. Actually, he died younger than I am. So what's that make me if he was the old man? But anyway, as I was around him over those years, different people from, his life would flow through. And I started to find that all of these different stories were true. And there was more to it than even that. But the thing that made him attractive to so many young people, and I was just one of them. We became very, very close as time went on, but many, many people were attracted to him. First of all, was that he had something, not just that he had something to share, but that he shared it. And he didn't share it in any kind of manner where he was trying to tell you how you had to live your life. Through the stories of his own behaviors that led in directions you probably didn't want to go in, there was the opportunity to learn. Plus, he had that kind of clairvoyant thing. And very often he would be sitting down and he would just tell somebody, something that they had in mind to do. And he'd say, if you're open to advice, you might want to think about that. And very often these young kids, and at that time, he was dealing a lot with really at-risk youth, people who were, came from backgrounds where they didn't have a lot and were often engaged in even gang type of behavior. So he ended up working with a lot of those guys mainly. And they came to recognize that what he said, he was trying to say for your good. And so people came to him. The other thing he did, he was a very visionary sort of man. And so, we had a number of things we were doing. We formed a little business together where we were trying to renovate homes in the area, pooled our money, put that together, started renovating, started working with kids in the neighborhood. So it was just a lot of things that he allowed for the certainty of mistakes, that we would try and possibly fail, but that from that failure, as long as we didn't harm anyone, there was a possibility for growth. And he would sit and he would talk with all of us. And so that was the way. He would talk about theosophy, but he would talk about it in a way you don't find in any book. It was the normal language we use to speak to each other. And I think I've been influenced by that greatly because, to me, this is the most precious thing, the most profound thing that we can connect with, this ageless wisdom. But if the way we choose to express it is linked to somebody else's way of speaking, somebody who is dead and gone for many years, then we're not even speaking with our own voice. And I think particularly for a young person, like I was at least, it's very easy to recognize when someone is talking at you rather than to you. And so that's something I think above and beyond all else for anyone. Everyone has the capacity to speak from what they know and feel and have experienced as truth. Then you can add in sprinklings of HPB and CWL and Annie Besant. But until the truth becomes alive in you, it's not truth, it's repetition.
Totally agree with that. And I think, and then maybe that's the reason that, okay, I think most of the members who have such sort of experience, when they share in their own words rather than, as you say, using the quotes of somebody else, it makes much direct connection. And that's why when we listen to you, there are so many things that you share from your own realization that touch the very core of the people. And in the same reference, in the same reference, we would like to ask that we all have been studying about the three limbs of theosophic life: study, meditation, and selfless service, since long back, since more than 100 years. But recently, in one of your talks, you recommended a fourth pillar or a limb to theosophic life, which is gratitude, which I think everybody will agree is very, very profound way of living. Could you share something more about the insights that led you feel that way?
First of all, it's always kind of a dangerous ground you step onto when you're modifying, week 3, now 4. Just take it as a suggestion for consideration. But yeah, we are all very familiar with the idea of service, of study, meditation, service. And I think very often, as with many things, we hear it, we have an idea of what is intended by that, but do we really go into what's meant by those? There are 3 words. What does it mean? I mean, when we say study, what does study mean? And again, with our shared educational backgrounds, I can say when I came to, this is interesting. When I first came to Chicago to study with the old man, I had met him for a period of some hours on a visit to Chicago. I lived in New York. I wasn't from that place. I met him. We spoke. I met him once briefly, came back, met him again. He spoke, and he spoke very deeply. I left. And it had an effect on me. In fact, it was something where when I went away, a certain type of change or transformation occurred. But anyway, it led me to believe that I would be better served if I could get back there and study with this man from whom this experience that was generated by contact with him. I recognized that. So I wrote to him, said I wanted to come back, spend some time. I was going to take time out of college for that. Told me to come on. And when I got there, he said, look, son, I took a 3-month period out of school, took a term off. He said, you're here for 3 months. He said, so I'm going to have to give you 3 years of study in this 3 months that you have. I said, great, bring it on, And with the mind of a university student, I knew what study was. Give me a book. And so this is what he did. I didn't tell him to, but he said, here, so take this and read it and then come down and we'll talk about it. College student having to write a bunch of papers, read. I went through this book that he gave me and was back within a couple of hours. He says, you through with it? He asked me a couple of questions. So then he gave me 2 books. He said, hey, I better keep him busy. But anyway, I'm reading books and I'm studying, And while I'm doing this, while I was in my room, I would hear downstairs all of the other people who would gather around the old man, and they'd be down there and I'd hear their laughter coming up through the window. And they'd just be talking and laughing. I'd come down, take a little break. After I'm there about 15 minutes, he'd say, look, you got to get back up and get back to studying. You got to get 3 years in your 3 months. I said, yeah, he's right. So this process went on for a while. And, after a while, I said, well, okay, my Sanskrit vocabulary is improving, but nothing's moving inside of me. And I came to him, I said, look, I'm getting a little frustrated with this studying. He says, well, why? I'm giving you the books. I said, well, yeah. He says, and that's what study is about, isn't it? And then I started to get a little bit wary. I said, well, yeah. He says, so you're being taught in the way that teaching is done, aren't you? And now I was getting uncomfortable because, I said, well, yes, but he says, so, really, you know what it is to teach. You're the student. I said, well, why don't we do it this way, old man? From this point, instead of me being the teacher, why don't you do that? He said, you sure? I said, yeah. He says, okay, first thing you need to do, put down those books. He said, you need to learn how to relax first. That's your job at the moment. So anyway, long story just to say, what is study? And so for me, I have had to reframe these ideas of study, meditation, service. To me, study is that activity of the attempt that we make. Often we make it through knowledge and information, but the attempt to elevate the range and our capacity for thought. HPB never said what theosophy was, but one of the things she did say was that to the mentally lazy, it will always remain a mystery. So there is some activation of the mind that has to take place. That takes place through study. But more than study, it takes place through questioning. So that's, to me, high thought and questioning is my paraphrase for study. Meditation, we all use that word casually. If we sit on a mat And if we close our eyes, if nobody can see us moving for, 15, 20 minutes, an hour, people ask you what you're doing. I'm meditating. Probably you were not. Probably, if we're honest, most of the time when you're sitting, you are practicing meditation, much like somebody practices playing the piano. You're not playing music yet. Meditation occurs at that point where we pop beyond the influence of thought. And that rarely happens in our sitting moments for most of us. So rather than talk about meditation, I'd rather talk about experimenting with quiet. Because as we become quiet, we find that there are deepening layers of that. We begin with quiet, then we can actually enter into something we might call stillness, and then there's something that silence, or samadhi, as it's described in the yoga tradition. Similarly with service, conscious, compassionate activity it's not something that generally flows from above to those more needy. It's to anyone who suffers. Anyway, those are the three things. The fourth, gratitude. Gratitude now has become something of a buzzword in the New Thought and spiritual communities, because it's the science to back up the effects of gratitude are there, much like with meditation. It's something that affects the immune system, it affects our levels of happiness, everything. But beyond that, it is a practice, unlike meditation, which any and everyone can link themselves to. Everyone has the capacity to be thankful, to appreciate. And much like meditation, much like service, the act of appreciation necessarily connects us with others. You begin to recognize that who I call me is the product of many, many influences for which I can be thankful. And then that opens up a possibility of vision and experience. So for me, these are valuable aspects of this fourth pillar. Don't tell anybody I said that, of this theosophical practice.
Yes, actually, as you say, the gratitude really has a transformative power and lead us to be more aware of what lives bring us daily, like to be more aware of reading the book of life itself and seeing each other that possibility of unity and transformation. And I guess all of us are experiencing that feeling of gratitude during all this interaction that we are having, listening to these deep words and all the experiences that you are sharing with us. It is being a really engaging dialogue, and if it is okay for you, we are going to bring also that transformative power of art for those who know him, or for those, and also for those who don't know him. Our president is also an art and music lover, and that's why we want to share with all of you next an instrumental piece that Sister Ana Cristina da Silva Moura from Brazil has sent to us. She's a member from 2005. She's an artist, she's a curator, she's a violinist, and she has shared a song called Melodia Sentimental from one of the most remarkable composers, Brazilian composers of the 20th century, Heitor Villa-Lobos. So let us just enjoy and connect to the music, the universal art. Thank you very much, Anna Cristina, for such a beautiful, beautiful interpretation, for bringing this spirit of music. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well,
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
we all know that.
Coming.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Coming back from this musical break, and
Another plane.
yeah, that was really nice, and also uh, about gratitude. Yes, that it also teaches us to have a balanced life, a state of mind, gratitude to whether happiness or suffering or comfortable times or difficult times in life. So our state of mind remains balanced. And coming more to more personal question, we heard you say in one of your interactions that, and maybe many of the people might have experienced this, but we want to hear from you, that you said that when you set your sight in a particular direction, then from corners that you are completely unaware, the help that is required arrives, and it arrives on time. Now, this statement is very soothing and profound, but would you like to share a couple of such events or situations that you have experienced so that the faith and trust of many in the divine plan is strengthened?
Yeah, that I said that, and I think that it's true. It's something that perhaps might not have been such an appealing idea to me, except that it's borne itself out over time as, at least to my experience, is something that's correct. I can remember, you hear stories from people. Previous president of the Theosophical Society, Radhaji, she used to come to the United States. I had never been to India at that time, and I wasn't an officer in the Theosophical Society, but had opportunity to talk with her when she would come to the United States. And I remember one time she was there, and I forget why, but for whatever reason, we were sitting together, and it was just she and I talking. And again, I don't know why, but she started talking about her life experience. Here she is, she's international president of the Theosophical Society, but she started talking about the road that kind of wound its way to this particular point. And it was fascinating in the way that, everybody's life is fascinating. But, influential things that occurred in her life were such things as graduating from high school, but graduating at an age that was too young to go on to the university as yet. So in this gap year, what will I do? Her aunt, Rukmini Devi Arundale, was famous for Bharatanatyam dancing. So she started dancing with her aunt, got to be good at it. Somebody happened to come through India and attended a convention of the Theosophical Society at which Radha was performing. Turns out this man was a director of films. Wants to put her into a film. She goes into this film, becomes quite world renowned. She travels the world. On and on and on, these different incidents. Then she's working for the Theosophical Society in India. And a time comes where there's a certain need in the Indian section. There was really a need, apparently, for, putting the financial things back in order. She had never had any experience with that sort of thing. She came into the position, and she says, I found that I was good at it. But this winding road of what you could look at as isolated incidents, but when you look back, you see that every one of those turns brings you exactly to where you are. I was describing, for instance, the the whole birth of this mission statement. It began as, the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not. And it evolved into something very, very different, because in that could be seen the seed of something else, which everything has that. So, if I were to look at my own particular direction, that's one of those things, this mission statement, where clearly this is something where there was a guidance and a movement towards something that wasn't apparent initially. But I mean, with myself, I was, an active young person. I was not looking for theosophy. I didn't know it existed. And, step by step, accident after accident, or coincidence after coincidence, or synchronicity after synchronicity, one thing leads to another. And, so it's something to me that becomes really quite clear. I had a good friend who most of my best friends in life, a couple of them, died young. I don't know why. It would be very nice at this stage in life to have those people who share things from the beginning to be able to share with. For me, they're gone. But one good friend who had no particular inclination toward the spiritual life, I remember talking with him at one point and, just describing, I was feeling out of sorts. And it was really kind of an issue of direction. I wasn't feeling as if I was on point for any kind of direction. Something he had never done, something he had no experience with. He says, Tim, have you ever thought about fasting? And, coming out of his mouth, why? He never fasted. That was not in his makeup. Anyway, that led to an experience experimenting with that. Out of that, one morning I woke up and, it was clear that, I didn't need to eat meat. I hadn't read anything about vegetarianism. I didn't know any vegetarians. I'm a bad example for many things because, you would hope that you would have some reasoning behind these decisions. It wasn't for me. Became vegetarian. Out of that vegetarianism, very shortly after that, the experience happened where I met the old man. And for whatever reason, I was able to get what he was giving. And from that, it led to something else. At a certain point, there is something within each and every one of us. We know what's real. We know what's true, but we've forgotten. And it is so close to us that very often it takes some incident to even momentarily break the bubble. But once you've seen, you can't unsee. And so you end up very often, this sort of direction that anyone would call a spiritual path is one that is very often almost counter to the flow of, normal life. And so it's challenging in that respect. So it takes a certain level of vision and again, appreciation for what you have experienced to move you forward. And inevitably, actually for me, it has gotten to this point, and it's probably crazy. It sounds foolish, perhaps, this idea that if you set your sights in a certain direction, it's as if the earth rises up to meet you. Unfortunately, that's something that works both ways. It works if you set your sight in bad directions. But things rise up to meet you, and it gets to the point where you start to live in a way where, I wouldn't say it's expectation, but your experience tells you that this is the way that things work. Joy Mills, she was really, probably many of the people listening knew her or knew of her, but she was really quite an influential person, and I knew her very well. But she said on one occasion in talking with her, she made this statement that I think applies. Very simple, but it takes a certain amount of insight on our own part. She said to look and advice. Look for the open door. Very non-specific. Look for the open door. Within each one of us, there are periods in life where something opens. Very often out of fear, we hold back and it closes. The moment has passed. But through our own experience, we start to be on the lookout for these opening moments. And as we step through that door, we find that there is a whole new world of experience that meets us, and another door that's awaiting us. And it starts to become a habit in many ways of living. And that's when it becomes quite powerful.
Thank you. Yes. Have to be open, as you have said, to the book of life. And talking of books, we all know that you are a very avid reader, and you must have read hundreds of books in theosophical publication, among many others, of course. And we want just to ask you, which one are your one or two favorite books, and which is the one you recommend to a newcomer member of a of TS, or like a fundamental book?
Yeah. I have to say, I have probably too many books.
No, yeah.
To move, when I took the president's job at the Theosophical Society in America, I left my home, and in order to move 70 boxes of books there, I had to give away 70 boxes of books. At this point, if I were to go, I would take, my library will be this, an iPad. But yeah, for books, then it's necessary. I mean, we have to, one of the ways we deepen ourselves and connect ourselves is through this type of study. It's best if we don't undertake it with the idea that there is wisdom in the book, but there is wisdom from the authors of those books that they are attempting to communicate in these black and white symbols. But for me, I would say if someone were just becoming acquainted with theosophy, oh gosh, it's a shame to don't get old if you can help it. HPB's book, Key to Theosophy. Key to Theosophy would be a good one because it lays out many of these principles, and then you can springboard from there. Inspirationally speaking, Voice of the Silence is an excellent book. It's poetic. It's also very much, it was written dedicated to the few. So it's one that is pointed toward people who are really intent on kind of walking this path. I would also say Taimni, it was excellent, very clear. He's a scientist in his training, a chemist. But Science of Yoga is an excellent overview. I know for me, at this point, the sort of things that are most attractive to me for reading are, very often it's poetry, and particularly poetry expressed through the mind or the mouth of mystics, people who have experience in the inner life and who attempt to communicate those levels of experience. And really to make that attempt and to put us into that, poetry isn't attractive to everyone. But if we believe that the ordinary sorts of languages that we use can communicate wisdom, we're starting off on the wrong foot. Somehow art in its various forms has this power to transport. It doesn't necessarily communicate, but it moves you to a point where the experience becomes your own. And very often, poetic expressions can accomplish that quite well. So, there's a number of people like that. Rumi is Rumi is the most read poet in the world at this point. And I don't even know if I would call him a poet. The other thing to me is that, again, as part of the dealing with our training that perhaps is not completely correct, poetry is oral. We approach it as a visual phenomenon where we read it from the page. There's a wonderful poet here in the US who I had an opportunity to have some conversation with, but he made a point that was very, very good for me. In reading particularly poetic works, read them out loud. Hear the words, say the words, and it can deepen the experience. So these are just some ideas about some literature and an approach to literature.
Yes, really. It's we know it's a very difficult question of choosing a book because also through our life this may change. But actually, what you were saying about poetry, yes, is like a form of spoken music. So it integrates the music, the sound, the power of sound, and the power of word. And also, it reminds me some words of a poet there in Colombia that she used to say that no one comes the same after the poetry. And it's the same with the spiritual, as you were saying. You cannot unsee what you have seen. No one comes the same after a spiritual meeting, after meeting with the spiritual self. So actually, yes, the mystical poetry is a way of transcending whatever it is in this world. And well, we are reaching the end of the meeting, but now that we are talking of the power of art, we have had voice, we have had instrumental music, and how can we leave dance behind? Also, when you were talking about Radha Bonier's experience with Rukmini Devi through the dance, all this change in her life. So we are going to invite you to enjoy a classical Indian dance presentation called Shiv Mangalacharan by Suhani Mohapatra, who is a member of Pragya's Theosophical Lodge. She is a very young lady that studies now in 11th grade and has been learning Odissi dance for 7 years. Maybe some of you remember her because she delivered a dance performance during the international convention. So let's enjoy Suhani's talent.
जटा विभूषित वाम भागौ नारायण प्रिय मनंग जटा तटा असंभ्रम भ्रमं नीली पनि झनी बिलोला बिची बल्हानी विराजमान मूर्धनी धागत 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 ज्वाला ललाट पाट पावके किशोर चंद्रशेखर रतिपति ज्ञानं मम जय तत्व विभ्रमुज गाव स्वैनि गाव क्रम पुरत कराळ भाल अव्यबाट जल धिमी 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 ध्वन मृदंग तुंग मंगल ध्वनि क्रम प्रवर्तित प्रचंड तांडव शिव नमामि पार्वती पति नमामि जाह्नवी पति नमामि चंद्रशेखर नमामि रक्तलोचन नमामि भक्तवत्सल नमामि दुःखमोचन तदीय पाद पंकज स्मरामि हमारेश्वर
हरि गिड़ा गिड़ी तक नारी गिड़ा गिड़ी तक नादौत विरवी दिगंबर शंकर रूप भया दिगि दिगि केश तांडव त्रिशूलधर ताजेकु डीजेकु झन झनता दिग झनता ताक धै कि तक किटि तक थे तद्दी थे दिद्दी थे दत्तक दित्ता तधीता धित्ता किड़ा धीता किटि तक थम दिगु तक पंचम कीशर त्रिपुर शंकर नंदी वाहन नाग भूषण रूप भयंकर टीक झनक झन जम्बू दीपक झंपट लट्ट तक्का थे दिनगड़ता तंगी किटि तक धैता दिनगड़ता तंगी किटि तक धैता दिनगड़ता तंगी किटि तक थे
Thank you very much, Suhani. Such a talented girl, and okay, best wishes for your future as a dancer. We have enjoyed very much your performance. Thank you. Well, now we have a surprise to share with you.
Since we are running short of time and we were not able to take up all the questions, but before we request the president for his final comments or a short meditation, just a couple of announcements to all our well-wishers or all our brothers and sisters who have joined this meeting today, that this year also we tried to make a calendar, a universal theosophical calendar at Pragya CS studio, as you can see, with some of the glimpses of Adyar and some of the important events and dates and the days that we celebrate in theosophical movement. And the link of this
The file.
In the form of PDF is being shared in the chat. So if anybody wants to download it or want a copy of it, can message us. And anyway, we will share it with everyone on the WhatsApp groups or by email. So we hope you like this calendar, and please make full use of it. And thank you. And Catalina.
And there is another announcement. There is a project of cooperation that we are undergoing right now called Drops of Theosophy. This is a project consisting in small videos, drops, literally drops, made in different languages, English, Spanish, Hindi, Italian, Portuguese. As of now, we aim to include more. And it's a part of a worldwide team that is working together. Theosophies from around the world that are contributing to send videos explaining in short terms, in simple terms, specific theosophical terms that we find in our daily readings in the book. So very soon we will begin to upload these drops of theosophy in the mentioned languages in the channel. We hope that all of you can benefit from this, and that this whoever wants to make part, to contribute, please just contact us, and be welcome to be a part of this cooperation group of theosophists.
Thank you, Catalina, for that. And now coming to almost to the end of our gathering, memorable gathering. But before, we request the president, our dear president, for his final comments. We would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to him for not only accepting our invitation, and which we were dreaming of, as you say, when you set your sights in one direction. So we have been dreaming of this for almost more than a year, that when that day will come. So we are grateful, and we are full of gratitude for this event really happened, for not only accepting but also sharing his valuable insights and vision. And not only that, but also making himself available in spite of the time difference between India and United States of America. And although we were not able to take up all the questions that we thought, but there is always a next time. And we thank all our well-wishers who contributed not only by their questions, but also by their vital presence, either through YouTube or through Zoom, which was over 100 people from India or all over the world. We thank Brother Zinu Master, Sister Anna Mora, Sister Suhani Mohapatra for their valuable and refreshing art contribution, and the delegates also. And really, it was a pleasure having this memorable gathering. And now we invite Mr. Tim Boyd, the president, to take us to the closing of this memorable gathering, either with his inspirational words or an uplifting meditation, after which we will close the meeting.
I want to thank, first of all, Shikar, Catalina. I want to thank you all for your work in making all of this possible. It's deeply appreciated by many, many people. I think this moment, even I've gotten to the point where I feel very positive about virtual gatherings. Initially, I wasn't completely sure, but I do find that just like the mind, it's not local. And so the capacity to come together and to do what we might describe as the master's work is not limited to physical presence. It's not even limited to physical bodies, of course. Meetings such as this often present special challenges. Sitting in front of a screen rather than sitting with someone next to you. There's always the phone to check. There's always the many things that can be distracting. But to the point that we find ourselves actually present always there is the possibility, just like what happened with we started off talking about this mission statement. Any time, any place where we can have a merging of our minds, of our energies, and a certain degree of quiet or stillness is the possibility for something to radiate through such a group. I think the intention for the Theosophical movement was that it could be such a group, such an opening to very necessary forces and influences in this world. You know, as much as we read and talk and think about the Mahatmas, they do nothing in this world without agents to work on their behalf. For us, we attempt to be such an agent, even with the many obstacles we face with our own personalities. But the attempt is what we make. Throughout the teachings, one little word keeps coming up again and again and again. Try. It's all we can do. Try. I have found try has this suggestion of effort, and I have found the things that are flowing to us and through us flow without effort. But on our part, it takes enormous effort to become effortless. So the goal for us to be present, to be clear, to be open. And we've done our work. So maybe while we're together, and while there are so many powerful people, as with each of us, maybe let's just take a moment to quiet ourselves. To allow ourselves to be thankful for this sacred moment and this sacred space we have created together. And to offer up whatever it is we may have garnered of peace, of understanding, of knowledge. We offer it up to the work of the great ones as our gift of gratitude. And for a moment together, let's just be still. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam, will you send the video of this one for once again hearing this speech? I
Yeah,
request you
Yes,
to
yes. The video will be in the YouTube channel. So whenever
in
you
the
can
YouTube channel, if you
watch
send.
it again, you can share it.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. No, because once we hear, it will not be so clear. Huh?
Okay.
So if you hear it the second 2-3 times, then it will made it clear also. We can
Okay.
follow instructions.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, madam.
Thank
It
you.
was
Thank
very
you very
interesting,
much.
really good.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, with this silence, we close the meeting. Thank you once again, Mr. President and Boyd, for giving us this opportunity to experience this moment. Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.
And have a safe trip to Adyar from US.
I'm looking forward to it. Your prayers will be accepted.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye
Good
to everyone.
week.
Thank you.
Blessed week.